G'day everyone. We're back for our normal weekly show with Aaron. G'day Aaron, how you going?
Hey, how's it going? You know how I feel today? I'm feeling a little rico suave. Yeah, so how's everybody in the chat doing? Are you guys feeling rico suave? I see Torben in here. How you doing there, Torben?
We got
Oreo,
we got stats
Gene
in here.
Lewis. Yeah, it's exciting.
Most people are just saying hello and talking about my coffee. A few people are saying don't walk past the shop when the 135 Sony's announced.
Oh, yeah, that's for David. Don't walk by it.
I know it's going to happen. I'm going to walk past there. I'll see it. It'll take a while before it's in stock, though. So that might be the one saving grace. It'll be a while before we see it on a store
Yeah,
shelf, I think.
I think so.
Oh,
You hope
that's
so. Your
funny.
wife hopes so.
She certainly does. I've got my usual multi coffee. Aaron's drinking his real coffee.
This is my coffee today, and every week I drink at a different place. And today we are drinking in Ohio. This is my home state. Go Cleveland Browns!
Cleveland Browns. Is that football or is it?
Yeah, that's
Just trying to
football.
make our. I'm moving my desk up and down to make sure we're the same height. That's about right. That's
That is
football.
football. I actually grew in a place called Canton, Ohio, and in Canton, Ohio, they actually formed the whole NFL and all that stuff, and they actually have the Football Hall of Fame there. So it's like a big football type place where I'm from. Even though I don't watch football, hey, you know.
Oh, now I'll give you a hint to what I'm drinking. This T-shirt might give you a hint to what
Birds?
I'm actually drinking. Yeah. So let's see if anyone. Oh, I nearly, I nearly showed it, but yeah. So it's a nice black malty coffee.
Hey,
Loving it.
Barry.
So g'day everyone, thanks for joining in. Obviously we've got now around 50, 60 watching, so please give us a thumbs up because we are starting to try and get this show
Absolutely.
moving out there. This week obviously it's on my channel, next week it's going to be on Aaron's channel, and we're doing that each week. And it seems to be
Yes.
doing really quite well. I don't think there's anything like this on the internet at the moment. Do you, Aaron? It's sort of a bit
Nothing.
unique.
Nothing. This is the #1 live streaming YouTube channel anywhere on the internet.
That's
So
right.
you guys are, yeah, privileged to be here. It's actually really good. I mean, it does have things that other people don't have. We talk about gear. We take a photo that we each show that we actually worked on and tell you behind the photo. That's why it's called behind the photo on how we get that shot. We do little tutorials and have fun and talk with chat. So
Well,
good
I
stuff.
suppose the difference too is that you've got two working professionals here that we are running
Yes.
full-time businesses, so it's a little bit different than just being full-time YouTube reviewers. So, that's the different aspect. So what have you been up to this week, Aaron?
Well, the usual. Actually, this weekend we have actually one of our little side stories is I'm going to go more into, but I have a wedding Saturday, so I'll get into that in a little later. The other thing we didn't point out is the fact that I've been predominantly into video. So we have the video aspect and the photography aspect from both of us as well on the show. And what about you, David? What you do?
Well, I've been up to Echuca on the weekend reviewing the A6400, actually. I was there. I wanted to go and scout, which is quite funny because you're going to discuss that later on, but I wanted to scout the
Yeah.
locations where I'm going to do a wedding on Friday. So I'm going back up there on Friday to do
All
a
right.
wedding in the same spots that you actually just, if you've seen my A6400 review, that's the
Oh,
exact
cool.
areas that I'm going to be shooting in. It is going to be really hot though. It's going to be 40 Celsius, which I suppose is about 105 or 106 degrees Fahrenheit, so I hope we don't melt. It is going to be a
That's
hot
hot.
one, but I'm really looking forward to it, so I can't wait for that actually.
That's really cool. So yeah, so that's funny that we're both going to be talking about the side story that I just added up there about scouting. So cool.
Yeah. So what we're going to do now, we're going to go through each week, just to give you a guide, because this is all still new, we're going to go through the latest stories, the news that's released. Then we start to go through, I'm just checking up on the thing up there, we show our work, one piece of our work each. We have a whole weekly story that we like to discuss, which is the main story of the day. And then we give a tip each week. Now, when it's on my channel, I'll be giving the tip. When it's on Aaron's channel, he'll be giving the weekly tip. And it seems
Exactly.
to be a good show. If you think you'd like us to add things, please let us know in the comment box down below, because we would love to know and build this around what you guys would really like to know and to learn about. I mean, it probably will change over time. We'll leave a little bit of question time at the end, and we'll also be answering questions at the same time too. So whoever's talking at the time will sort of pop in on the chat and can read out questions and things like that as well. Like I am DeBrown has said, nice blue shirt. Why are you saying that's? He's talking about me. My shirt's not blue.
Mine's blue.
You're colourblind. He might not have his monitor calibrated, which is what I'm going to talk about later on, which is interesting. Yeah, I love it. So let's go anyway, because I want to bring up the latest news. So what we're going to look at now is that. So let's switch over.
Switch it on over, brother. Samyang, yes, there it is. Yes, audio testing 1 2 3. Can everybody hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Hello, hello, hello. Got it? David, you feel privileged. Cool.
Just going to switch for a second and then it should work. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Yeah, we had a little bit of a glitch with the audio, but it's working now. Samyang, it's really interesting because they've now announced that there's going to be 8 new lenses this spring. Now, they're not saying yet which lenses this is going to be. There's some hints a little bit down here that some are going to be obviously Canon RF and Z mount. But there's also some Sony mount lenses there, like the 85 1.4 is a Sony mount. But Canon RF and Z versions, they're going to be of existing lenses. Obviously, there's also going to be some new lenses announced too. But it's quite interesting because I'm also the next story is going to discuss Sigma, but the market really seems to be growing in the lens department. Like they're releasing them very quickly, Aaron.
Yeah, that's when I saw all those lenses coming out, I was quite amazed at the lenses. Now, I don't know if am I on or is it just the full screen
no, it's just the full
on
screen.
yours?
Yeah, so it's only full screen. We're not on as a picture.
Yeah, so yeah, when you read down here about like you just said the Samyang, I mean for Canon and all those things. So it says it's going to be for Sony E mount, but there's that question mark. So will it be or maybe not? But I'm sure it will be because. I've got, I don't know if you guys can see me, but I've got 2 little Samyang lenses here. I've also had an 85 1.4 for my Panasonic cameras, and I like the lenses. They're sharp, they're good. I like these because they're light and small. The only thing, someone mentioned it while we were getting all this ready, and I don't know who it was, so I apologize for that. But someone says, of course, with Samyang, you need to have their docking station to update the firmware. It's a little bummer because I don't have that, so I'm stuck on version 2, and now they're on version 3. And I don't know if these lenses are going to have that same docking station. I think they probably will. But the cool thing about the docking station for that is you can actually manipulate how you want the focus to be quicker or slower and all that. So it's kind of neat, but then again, you can't update firmware. So I don't know where they're going with those, if they're going to stick with that scenario or not.
I suppose that's the difference with the Tamron, say, for Sony in particular, because, excuse me, Sony have given them the ability to upgrade the firmware in the camera. So that's a big advantage. Obviously, Samyang haven't got that advantage to be able to do that, which is a bit of a pity.
Yeah,
I know you can buy that dock here, but I heard it was pretty hard to get in the US.
Yeah, it is. So, I'm stuck on version 2 with these. This is the 24 millimeter or 35 millimeter. But I haven't had any issues with them. I heard version 3, you get better autofocus. But again, I have no issues. But it is what it is. I guess I'll be stuck on version 2.
Yeah, well, and that can be the issue too, because I've noticed if you're dealing with any of the adapted lenses, if you can't update them, it does make a big difference on how they can work with those cameras, because they can improve it drastically through firmware. Now you can send them away though, can't you, Aaron? So you can send it back
I don't know.
to Samyang.
I'm not sure. I have to look into it because I would like to have version 3s. So I don't know. I'll have to look into that. I'm sure you could.
Yeah, I think that's what people were doing. They were actually sending that off to Samyang to get it upgraded there. Or perhaps you can go to a store or something like that has the adapter and then they can upgrade it for you.
I'm going to check that out because I would like to have the newest version, of course.
But you know, the interesting thing is that when you're looking at this, they're clearly going for a whole market here. Like they're looking at the new Nikon Z cameras. They're looking at also the Canon R series cameras as well, and also Sony here with native lenses as well. So it looks like it's we're just going to have so many lenses or so much choice going on. The interesting thing is I noticed the Sony version there is an 85 1.4, so that's interesting. Yeah, quite shallow depth of field. Be interesting to see how good that actually is and how sharp it is.
Yeah, that f1.4, like I said, they have an old. Is it that they have an old version, or we're going to talk about another lens? I think.
Yeah, we're going to talk about a Speedmaster and also the Sigma in a second.
Yeah. Okay, so that's cool. We'll wait for that one. So
that's that anyway. So that's coming. They're saying 8 powerful new lenses coming this spring. That'd be the US spring, so it's obviously not that far away. So that's quite exciting. Very exciting. Story 2, we're looking here, and it's saying that Sigma is going to announce 11 art prime lenses for L mount. Woo! So this is interesting because it wasn't that long ago we were saying, well, there's no lenses for the L mount, the new Panasonic that's come out. Well, it looks like that's certainly not going to be the case if you want to shoot with Sigma lenses, because they're actually going to announce there's the 14 1.8, and these are all reasonably priced lenses. 20 millimeter 1.4, the 24 1.4, the 28 1.4, 35 1.4, 40 1.4, the 50 1.4, 70 2.8 macro, the 85 1.4 art as well, the 105 as well, and the 135. Now these are all art lenses, Aaron. Have you used Sigma before?
Yeah. I had the Sigma, the famous Sigma, what was it, 18 to 35, I believe, for a while. And the reason I got rid of it is the same reason why I don't get any Sigma now, is because for me, they're just too big and heavy. Not that I can't carry them. It's just I'm a very minimalist when it comes to, anything in my life, and specifically photography and video. I just like smaller things, hence I got these small lenses here. And so they're too big for me, but man, the quality that those things crank out is just absolutely great. Another thing is I have a good friend that lives in Miami that has the 105, and he loves it to death. He says it's like the best lens he used, except it does not autofocus quite as well as the Sony cameras. If it's just about image quality, I think they're really good. But the size and weight is the reason why I don't have those.
Yeah, they're certainly interesting. I still haven't been able to get one. I'd love to try the 105 and the 135, particularly to see how they actually are. It'd be very, very interesting. I'm just trying to adjust my level. So someone said mine's down, the audio level. So I'm just trying to fix it so we're both the same. Yeah, I'd love to try. I think that's about right now. Yeah, I'd love to try those two lenses, particularly because I'm a portrait shooter. And the 85, 105 and 135 would be amazing. And I'd love to try them all out, because I may be in the market sometime later this year to purchase one of those lenses. I'm not sure which one I'd like the most. I'm still tempted by the 105 because it's a 1.4 aperture, and I'd love to sort of see. It's amazing. Yeah, I'd love to see how they all are, but I'm going to wait. But honestly, if you're looking at this, it's great news for Panasonic users, that's for sure. And you've used Panasonic extensively, haven't you, Aaron?
Very extensively, yeah. I probably, like in the last, I always say 10 years, this might have been longer now. I'm just like stuck on 10 years. But in the last 10 years or so, although I had Nikon, Canon, Blackmagic, and Panasonic, the most of my time in those 10 years was with the Panasonic Micro Four Thirds cameras of all different models in between. So yeah, it's very exciting.
So that's really exciting. I'm just checking if there's any questions that people are sort of saying there about that. 42 Pros says the 85 1.8 also has a programmable focus hold button. Well, yeah, like some of the lenses have buttons on them, and I'm going to talk about that when I talk about the 135 from Sony. You can see Aaron's holding one up there as well. And they are really handy, Aaron, aren't they?
Yes, they are. I wish all my lenses had that.
What's that lens?
This is the Sony 85mm 1.8.
Oh, yep.
But the thing is when one lens has it and your other ones don't, it kind of screws you up because you go to reach for like, I have the other lens on. So I wish they all had that button. Unfortunately, they don't. But when I have this on there, it comes in super handy. You know, I'm still actually trying it out. I did the eye autofocus, but I've heard other people use other things, so I'm still kind of trying it out. I'm not like stuck on one thing yet, and I think most people use it for eye autofocus. Do you use it for something different, or?
That certainly would be what I'd use it for if I had it. It'd be eye autofocus. You know,
Yeah, that's kind of what I use it for.
It's perfect for doing that.
But isn't the new update going to give us eye autofocus in the shutter button itself?
Yes. Yes,
so
it is.
That would free up that to do something else. So yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see how that works out and what I would end up putting on that button.
Yeah, because I noticed when I used the A6400 on the weekend that you no longer need to have a button anymore for getting eye autofocus like you used to, because you just half press the shutter. Well, I was still using back button focus, but you only have to press that and the eye autofocus is automatic. So it's made that button irrelevant, really. You can just use it for anything else that you want to actually deal with.
I'm excited for that update because I always use like the back button focus to do the eye autofocus, and sometimes it gets a little awkward trying to reach it, and I just want to be able to push that shutter button down and do it. So cool.
Yep. So that's really exciting anyway. So if you are in the Panasonic realm, especially particularly with the new Panasonics that have just come out, it looks like you're going to have at least plenty of Sigma lenses this coming year.
Excellent.
Yeah, which are excellent. They're all their art lenses. So stay tuned for the release on that. They're not saying what the dates are that they're going to come out. They're just saying that, let me just switch over. They're actually just saying that, you know, they are all going to come out sometime this year, are going to be available for the S1 and the S1R. So it's quite exciting for those users, and I'm really happy for them.
Yep, I would be too if I still had my Panasonics.
So next story is this one. We've got a new Speedmaster lens that's coming out for the Nikon Z mount, actually. This was, I think this is the same as it says down here that it already exists for the Sony E mount. So it's a 50 0.95, and they're marking it as the 3 version of this lens. But again, it's another lens that is now going to be available for the Z mount system. So it looks like, again, we're going to be fine. And in all these other brands, camera manufacturers that are out there that are just starting, we're obviously going to have a number of lenses that they can actually get now.
Yeah.
So that's quite exciting. I don't know what it'd be like. Obviously, I think it's manual focus because the last one was.
Yeah, it seems like all, I may be wrong, but it seems like all lenses that are 0.95 are all manual focus for, I don't know why that is. Have you heard why they don't put autofocus on 0.95 aperture lens?
Well, they can. I believe that Sony are going to possibly develop something around that area. Nikon, one that they just released, was 0.95. It's probably just to do with cost and also size of the lens, Aaron, that you know, it would be a massive lens if you start to put autofocus things inside these lenses.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah, and that's probably the only reason why they're not doing it. I'm sure that sooner or later they'll do it.
We have lenses for Panasonic that are like, I don't know, probably about as big as the Sony Zeiss lens, and they're like 0.95. I forget the name of those, if anybody knows in the chat. And they don't have autofocus either. So I always kind of thought that was strange not to have autofocus on any 0.95 lenses. Leave it in the chat if you know of a 0.95 lens with autofocus.
Next story. This is interesting if you, again, dealing with Canon. They've called it Canikon. I love that name that they've actually come up with. So it's Canikon. Now, it's an adapter that will let you use your Canon EF mount lenses on the Nikon Z cameras. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, this is really... Now, they're not saying how well this is working. This might be similar to what it was like when we started out with Sony, and initially when it came out, the adapters didn't work very well at all. So you may find that this has the same problems. Have you used adapters, Aaron, before?
The only adapters I've used were the what do you call those? The speed boosters.
Okay.
And none of the speed boosters I had at the time had any autofocus to them. So, but just reading online, yeah, most of them you don't have a great experience with, all except that the one people use for the Sony. What do you call that? The
Yeah, the
MC11. I
MC11.
guess that one works.
See where it is. I've got
I'm,
that somewhere. I thought
I'm
I had
sure
it
that
before.
works pretty good from what people say.
Yeah.
But other ones don't seem to be all that great. Never as good as a native lens. So if you're doing video, sometimes it's not that bad. When I do video, I almost always use manual focus. I usually set up my shot, set up my focus, or we will pull focus manually. I would never pull focus on an automatic thing. And this is like in a production situation, not like filming yourself. So for photography, though, I don't think I would trust many of these, especially when they first come out.
Well, this is interesting. So we'll have to wait and see how this performs when it
Yeah.
does come out. I thought I had my MC11 here, but I haven't. I've put it somewhere. I was just looking all around my desk for it.
Because they can actually say, yeah, it does autofocus, but is it any good?
The MC11 apparently works amazingly well.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, I've still got to test it, so I'm waiting to get a Canon lens so that I can actually test it. But that's meant to work very well now, and they're constantly updating it, so they do update it regularly. But this looks like at least they're starting to do something now for Canon. If you've got all those lenses and you did want to get the Nikon Z camera, that you are going to be able to use your Canon lenses on it. And even if you don't own the lenses, if you've got the ability to just hire them, and if this adapter works well, it's a great thing. You know, you could just say go and hire an 85 1.2 for cheap, because there's plenty of Canon lenses out there that you could hire or borrow off friends.
Yeah, and the other thing, because usually when they have autofocus contacts and all that, the metadata will also go over as well. So even some people that might not necessarily need the autofocus but want the metadata for certain reasons, like in video, I think you can have something like that.
So we're saying, Thomas said the audio, actually, David's is just right. Aaron's is 6 dB too high, and the clipping of his PC preamps are audible. Interesting. Yeah, we sort of noticed something like that earlier, and we were trying to adjust that before we actually started.
Okay, so I'm at like, I'm really low on mine. I don't know if that made any difference, but I turned my little unit down here.
It must be something to do with Skype, what it's doing to it, Aaron. It's because we're going through Skype at the moment,
maybe.
so perhaps Skype has done something to Aaron's audio. So that's interesting that you were saying it's about 6 dB too high. 42 Pro said lots of gear choices. I think triple 07 said lots of great choices we've got so much choice right now. Kieran has also said David is right, Sony is coming out with a 0.95 50mm. And Tim said 0.95 lens has such small depth of field that there may be a limitation for autofocus, and that could be true as well. It might be hard to nail autofocus at that depth of field.
Yeah, I saw Tim say that, so that could be. Let me check. Does my audio sound better? I'll just kind of sit over here a little further from the mic.
Yeah, just let us know if that audio has changed a little bit, guys, with Aaron. So, Aaron, talk for a second. We'll just see what people say.
Hey, guys, how's that sound? I'm a little further away. Maybe it sounds better.
Yeah, it's definitely.
Or maybe
it's definitely peaking a fraction more than mine, but we're pretty close now. It's not much above. Both sound similar to me. So, yeah, Conrad's saying it sounds okay, so I think it's right. Oh, so Thomas said, yes, Skype often increases the audio automatically, even though you think it's set properly.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah. All right, so let's go to the next story. Anyway, so that's good. So it's called Canikon. I don't know how they're going to like using that word. I'm not sure whether Canon or Nikon will be happy about that, but let's wait and see what they say. This is just a bit of a fun story that I found the other day, which was amazingly cute. Sometimes you are trying to find some inspiration or something to shoot, and these images are really cute that they've come up with, making animals out of vegetables. So obviously I looked at this first and thought, what is it? But it's obviously a dog or something, or I'm not sure, a bear. I'm not quite certain, but
they're bears.
They're bears, are they?
Yeah.
You got a little elephant here. What's this one? I suppose it's a duck or something like that out of the spaghetti.
It's a snowman.
Oh, is it a snowman? Well, we don't get snow, Aaron, so.
Long Neither Rider. Do I live in Puerto Rico.
Thank you so much, Long Rider, for the donation. Really appreciate that.
Yes, Long Rider, thank you so much.
It's good that it comes to me because that comes to me and not Aaron.
Hey, what am I, chopped liver?
Yeah, you don't get
That's
snow
no
where you
fair.
are.
No, I don't get snow or tips because they don't allow it in my country.
The dog's cute out of the banana there that you can look at too. I mean, these are really quite funny, some of them. Is that a cat? Is it? Oh, I don't know.
A mouse.
Oh, it's a mouse.
You don't know your animals. My golly, man. Everyone, did you get any of these right yet?
No, I don't think so.
Wow, I'm glad I'm here, man.
Is that a bear?
Yeah, that might be a panda bear.
Oh, okay. And then swan.
Yeah, you might be right on that. They're attacking a worm. It's kind of cool.
See, we have black swans here in Australia, totally different to you guys. Our swans are pitch black.
Yeah, I don't know if those are swans because they should be white, but
yeah. So I don't know what it is about Australia. How come our swans have turned black? But anyway, because they're exactly the same looking bird, but they're black, so which is really bizarre.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, but this is interesting. So if you're ever stuck for ideas, it's amazing when you look at something like this that comes out and you think, wow, what a great idea. I love that lettuce. Now that is a puppy, isn't it?
Cool.
Just
Yep, it's a little puppy dog.
next story. So we've got
story.
Now I wanted to just talk about this quickly because it seems
look
like
at
the new phones that are coming out are all going to have this split screen. Now I don't know if Apple are going to follow on this because there hasn't been any rumors about this, but I only wanted to talk about that because that could be great if you did want to edit your images that you capture. But they have, like this Samsung Galaxy has 6 cameras on it apparently, which is nuts when you think about it. It seems to be that they're going to start using more and more of this artificial intelligence to do amazing things in cameras up and coming. You know, if you look at this now, I noticed there's a couple of other brands just the other day have noticed this as well. Have done the same thing with multiple cameras and also this fold-out screen. It's an interesting concept because you have the screen on the front when it's folded. It looks like a normal phone, and then obviously when you open it out, you have the big screen internally. So
very cool.
Yeah, really cool. And there you can see it open through there, and you get a really large screen real estate. Now it's saying that the device features 6 camera modules. You've got 3 on the back, 12 megapixel primary, a 12 megapixel telephoto, and a 16 megapixel wide. 2 inside, 10 megapixel selfie, and an 8 megapixel RGB depth. So that's obviously so you can get the fake bokeh, so you're out of focus. And 1 on the front cover for a 10 megapixel sensor. Like, that's nuts, Aaron, isn't it?
That's like so crazy. That's almost like did it say how wide it is? I don't know in inches. Did you already say that?
It was.
It doesn't say the size really, but it's kind of cool because
$2,000 US though.
Well, I mean, as far as the size, it's almost. I mean, having it being that narrow is really cool to fit in your pocket, like your jeans, and then to be able to pull it out and open it up, like when you're sitting there on a bench waiting for your wife to shop all night. Then you can kind of like see the screen better and do all kind of stuff. I think it's really cool.
I think looking at that, it's 7.3 inches, which is quite a decent size. I looked at one the other day, and I think it was 8 inches that was announced. I can never pronounce the name, the Chinese one, Heiyue, however it's pronounced. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I think that was an 8-inch one. But I'm not sure if I'd like to go down this way because I do tend to like I've got the iPhone XS Max, and I liked the size of this overall. I'm not certain that I want something that's that much bigger. Would you like a much larger phone, Aaron, than what you've got?
Well, like I said, if that thing can stay small and then fold out when I want it, I wouldn't mind it. But I actually am still. Well, let me take this out. So you're asking about size. Everybody always asks me, like, what phone do you have? It's the small iPhone 5S.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I like small. I just told you guys. I mean, look, I like things that are compact and my everyday life as well. So I actually like small phones. But if that can be small and fold out to be bigger, I think it'd be kind of cool. But I'm on an iPhone 5S.
I do think this is probably one area where, though, camera manufacturers have to start thinking about these sort of things, though, of using more AI in their cameras. I'm sure AI will be used extensively in this, and it's one area where we're just starting to see now with like the A6400 and things like that, where they're using AI to give you that amazing focus that they've got in there. And I think you're going to start to see this in other manufacturers as well, where they really are starting to use, say, taking like HDR, but taking multiple pictures all at once and then combining them in camera, so you get this amazing dynamic range, things like this. So it's certainly interesting. So let us know in the chat, does any of this interest you? Because particularly if you're dealing with nearly 2,000 US, they're getting very, very expensive, aren't they?
Yeah, that's that's a lot of money. I mean, I probably wouldn't buy one for that, but I think it's a cool concept, cool idea. If they can come down in price sometime or someday, then maybe I would consider it. But it's too expensive for me.
Tim said and this is the name I can't pronounce. The Hawaii. I was going to say Hawaii, the Hawaii, or however. Do you know how to pronounce that? I don't know how to pronounce it. It said the phones look much better. It's a much better folding phone. Trevor said that folding Samsung phone is just atrociously ugly, and it has a hinge mechanism in 219. Yeah, I noticed if you look down here, that's the hinge sort of mechanism that works through here. But it is very, very clever how the screen looks, though, because when you do open it, it looks like you can't see. Now, whether you can or not, I don't know. But
is that Photoshop to make it look like it's seamless?
Yeah. I mean, but it's certainly an interesting technology that you can fold that screen in half and then open it up. But,
because I believe what we're looking at here is CGI. It's not like the real phone.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly that's a CGI product we're looking at. So there's bound to be a seam going down there, although it might be small. I'm sure it's got to be there. But then maybe it's like a film, because if it's half kind of folded, I'm looking at the middle one. Maybe it's like a more of a film, or you know what I mean? It's not like two halves. It's actually a one piece that folds without being creased.
Well, that's what it is. I believe they've developed this new technology where the screen can be just folded. So
without a crease.
Yes, without the crease. So it's interesting how it's been done. So I don't think there's actually a join between the two screens there, and I think it's actually just one screen that they open up, and then it's one complete screen. Yeah.
And I actually kind of see how this might work now, because if you look at the back of the hinge, it's quite thick. So it probably, when you bend it, it's not creasing. It's actually kind of like a bow, or I don't know what you call it, and it kind of fits inside that. So yeah, I can see how that works now.
Now, Neve said, try pronouncing it as way, leading H. Hey, way.
I'll let you tackle that one.
I still don't understand how to pronounce it. Anyway, so that's interesting. Look, I just wish, seeing all these amazing screens that are coming out, though, why on earth don't camera manufacturers put these amazing touch screens and stuff like that into their camera? I mean, look at Sony, for instance. Sony make... They're probably... Are they the only camera manufacturer that actually makes mobile phones? I think they are. Well, if that's the case, why aren't they using some of that technology in their screens on the back? Like Canon is much better with their screens on the back. Nikon Z is better. I just don't understand why Sony don't use basically like their camera phones, like they've just released one the other day as well. Plug that into the back of the camera, and then you've got this amazing interface and touch interface on the back of the screen. I mean, it's a bit weird, but I just wish...
Tony Northrup had a video talking about that. The camera manufacturers really do have to go into that, and Chelsea had some good points of people now getting into photography. When you pick up this, it's going to feel so just clunky and old school if you're only used to a smartphone. So I just have no idea. I mean, can you imagine that folding technology in a screen like this that can fold out and stuff? I mean,
there's certainly some interesting things for it. I mean, the closest we've sort of got to using a full screen was the Blackmagic, wasn't it? The new Blackmagic that came out. I think, is that the one that had... No, I'm just trying to think. There was a camera released, and someone might be able to say in the chat, where you had Lightroom or something in the camera.
Oh, Zeiss, isn't it?
It was the Zeiss camera, wasn't it?
35. Yeah, it has a fixed 35 millimeter focal length lens. I think it's an f2 or 2.8 or something on there. And yeah, it has. Now that is getting closer to what I'm talking about and what Chelsea and them were talking about, it actually has a Lightroom mobile built into it. So you could take a raw image and just do those like basic. I mean, who wants to sit there on that? But they're getting close. They're getting closer to the idea of integrating more cell phone-ish type features and stuff into a camera, rather just having these old school menus and you can't even touch through them on this. It's so crazy.
So another way of pronouncing it is Huawei. Huawei. There you go.
Huawei.
Huawei.
Ah, I can say that. Huawei.
So anyway, that's really interesting. I just thought I'd share that because, look, it's just another gadget. But, I mean, you're dealing with a phone here that's got 6 cameras on it. I noticed that Sony now is going to work with that other company that I've forgotten their name. Someone in the live chat may be able to help me, where it had the 8 or 12 cameras involved with it. I think Sony are going to make the sensors or something for that camera. It sort of disappeared, and if you look at it, it looked really weird because on the back, I'm just waiting for someone in the chat to chime in, but on the back of the camera, it had, like I said, 8 or 12 cameras that were all on the back of it. So the whole back of the actual phone, in other words, or this camera, was cameras. And then they all joined together to do these amazing things, like you could focus later on and do all this sort of stuff. It's amazing. And Sony have just gone with them. So I'm sure down the track, you're going to start to see much more of these technologies merge, and perhaps we'll see some incorporated into digital cameras as well. But, you know, it's just interesting. I'll mention that if someone says in the live chat what that manufacturer is. So next story is Sony have unveiled the 135mm 1.8. Now it is a G-Master lens, and I believe it's just underneath $2,000 if you're going to buy it in the US. So we'll probably pay $3,000 here. Gary's going to hate me if I walk past the store and buy one of these.
That's for sure.
Yeah, I know. So it does have the AM/FM switch on the lens. You've got the buttons. There's one on the top and one on the side. You've got also a focus switch where you can control it so it doesn't have to focus if you're coming in close, or you can focus to infinity if you want to do that. It's got the declicked aperture, which I love. Great for doing video because you don't have to have that stepping when you are changing it. If you're walking from a church to outside, you can just rack the aperture and not get it stepping through your footage. So that's great for videographers. Looks like a really nice lens. They're saying that the bokeh apparently is meant to be lovely and round, but from the reviews I've seen this morning, it doesn't really look any different than the Sigma, really. But great lens. It's nice and light compared to the other. Say it's much lighter than the Sigma. I think it was about 300 grams or 200 grams lighter than the Sigma, which is a big deal if you're lugging that lens around. But it's it's a few $100s dearer than what the Sigma is, for instance. But I would think if you were looking at this lens, it's going to have great autofocus, probably amazing autofocus. Apparently, it focuses much better than the 85 1.4 in low light, so that's great. But all around, it seems like it's a good lens.
Yeah, I think it's this might come close to that Sigma area, but one thing, like you said, it's going to definitely probably focus better. And I heard those Sigma lenses had a hard time focusing with backlit models and stuff like that. So if 135 f1.8 is your thing and you have the money for it, this is for me a no-brainer. You're going to have better focus. It's going to be lighter. And it has that manual aperture, which I love. So I think it's a pretty good lens. Yeah, if it works and looks good.
Yeah, the only thing, and this is the thing with, I've never really used one for live shooting, like for portraits and things like that. The only thing that worries me about it is that I love the 85 so much, and I'm just wondering whether you've really got to come back a long way from your subject, and you might use that you lose that connection of working with your subject an awful lot with dealing with 135mm. So it's something that I'm probably going to try and get a length of one. That's why I wanted to get the Sigma to have a go at it to see if I loved working at that focal length. 85 I love working at 35 and 50 because you are very close to the model particularly, and you can talk with them, interact with them very, very easily. The second you're getting to 135 hour and you're starting to really pull back away, and that could be an issue.
Well, for quite a while, I mean, I've been predominantly in the last 10 years just a prime shooter, prime lenses. But I had a few, I had a zoom lens on the Panasonic. It was the Panasonic 35 to 100, which is a 70 to 200 equivalent. And on Micro Four Thirds, you know, because of smaller sensor, I try to get as much perceived background blur as I could, so I'd always be shooting at like 200 millimeters, and it gives a nice compression. And man, that was just having a 200 millimeter. This is 135, but getting that far away is a real bummer when you're, especially on the beach when we do like beach shoots or love stories.
Yeah.
I mean, trying to talk to someone that far away was just a bummer. So then when I got into the full frame with the Sony A7 III and I slapped on a 50 millimeter, I can get the background blur that I was trying to get at 200 millimeters. You might get more on there. I would have to do the test, but I can still get that background blur and still be close to somebody with the 55 millimeter or even the 85, as you mentioned. So 135 is just a little too long for me after coming from that 200 equivalent on Panasonic.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's, I mean, look, I do really want to try one. I mean, I'd love to give it a go and just see how it works for me in portraits. Like I said, still my favourite are the 35 and the 85 focal length, and that tends to be really my favourite two focal lengths. I love the 55 if I'm dealing with video particularly, and I use that all the time if I'm dealing with video. But, you know, like I said, I'll check it out if I really love it. I'm certainly not going to pre-order it because I'd like to try it before I buy one. So I'm going to have to wait until they're available in the stores, and then I can give it a go before I make a decision about purchasing one, just in case if I find that I am having to step back too far away from my the clients that I've got, and so it's sort of work in progress. I'm going to see when these are released, and I may be able to do that earlier, because if I can get the Sigma 135 and try that out, and I like that focal length, well, it looks like from the reviews that the Sigma and this lens basically give exactly the same result, or very, very close. So it'll give me an idea whether I'd like to move down this line. It certainly will focus better than the Sigma, though, that's for sure. I'm also a bit fascinated with the 105, though. That may be a little bit better because you don't have to be so far away. And you've also got that 1.4 aperture, which sort of interests me as well, particularly for low light shooting. That really could be good, but I don't know how the focus is on that. But you know, it's interesting. It certainly is an interesting lens.
Yep, I would probably choose the 105 if I were to get one, just because it's not much. That's like, what, a couple feet stepping back than the 85. But 135 just getting too, I've been there, done that, and it was just like, it was too hard.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think people should forget, though, and this is the important thing, I don't think people should forget how important the 35 and the 50 mil focal length are to people, though. And immediately everyone's just going to rush out and, you know, all be shooting at 135. But if you're dealing with, as your eye sees things, you can't sort of go past, say, a 35 and a 50. The 24 also may be one that I get down the line too, because I'd love to get that for a gimbal, the 24G Master. But it is something that I'm going to look at, and it's something that I may get down the line. But at least Sony now have got one, so that's fantastic. But
very cool.
Let's wait and see.
Yes.
Now, the last one I wanted to talk, actually, just let me check, because I think that was...
we didn't talk about
that's going to be the main
We didn't talk about the Samyang 10 millimeter.
Oh, perhaps I didn't even put that in.
There's a Samyang XP 10 millimeter f3.5 full frame lens for the Nikon F mount. It's the world's widest distortion-free prime lens. Now, to have a 10 millimeter...
I've got that there. Let me just copy it, Aaron, and I'll bring it into the thing so you can talk about it. Let me just go there. Apple C.
That is a really interesting, to have 10 millimeters and not have any distortion. It says right here it's made up of 11 groups of this and that, and does all this stuff to take out the distortion. So if you're someone who...
I'll switch over so it'll be on there now. Okay. So,
alrighty.
Yeah, it's on there now.
Yeah, so if you have one of those Nikon cameras and you're a wide lens shooter, I mean, 10 millimeters at 3.5 with no distortion could be really good for architectural type shots, because now, of course, I have the 24 Samyang here, and there's distortion on it, and that's one of the reasons why I like this lens, is I actually like the distortion because I can get really cool artistic shots. But if you are someone who does architecture type stuff, you don't want distortion because then you have to fix it in post. But this lens could be really cool for those type of photographers.
Yeah, it's looking interesting, isn't it? To look, there's no cost on it yet, is there? Though I don't think. I'm just
There
trying to,
was a where did I see that?
just trying to see. It's got the bulb obviously at the front, so you'd have trouble fitting NDs.
It's
on
1,000. It's well, there's no price for the States, but it's in Europe.
Yeah.
It's going to be about $1,100, which
Yep.
is decent for someone that needs an architectural lens. I mean, it could be really good.
I used to have a Nikon lens, which was, I think it was the 10 to 18. I think that was the size. I could be confused, but it had that very bulbous front on it as well. That was a beautiful lens as well. Like I said, the only issue is that you do get problems if you're trying to fit NDs on there because they won't screw on due to that lens. So you have to use another system of using like clamps and stuff to put the variable NDs on there. But yeah, it looks like a lovely little lens. I'm glad I didn't miss that. Yeah, it was in the show notes you sent me.
Yeah,
it does look really
I thought
good.
it was interesting.
Yeah.
Not to have any distortion is really cool. So.
And it says
There's
it's
that.
the world's widest prime lens, distortion free.
Yeah, now I read there was another lens that was 11 millimeters. So, manufacturers always try to squeeze out one little dot of something and say it's the widest. So it is the widest, but apparently there's 11 millimeter f4. But I don't know if it's, I think it's a Nikon lens. I'd have to check. But that one, I think, had distortion, and it was an f4. So this being wider and a third of a stop or half of a stop brighter, pretty neat.
Yep. Beautiful. All right, so now we're going to go on to just showing two images that we've shot for ourselves. So you can go first, Aaron, if you wanted to talk about what you've done on this image.
Okay. All right, is it showing right now?
Yes, it's showing right now.
Oh, yeah, I see it here. Okay, so this is behind the photo. Now, this is my photo I took. This is in Puerto Rico. This was in a beautiful small town called San German. I absolutely love shooting there. There's so much textures, and it's just amazing to shoot there. So this photo here, it wasn't too complicated. I was happy that it was an overcast day, almost like a stormy sky. Actually, you can kind of see it in here because, of course, you don't have the harsh light, and I didn't want to have to have my assistant, who is my wife, to hold up any scrims or shadow her or anything like that. But then, of course, when you have even lighting, everything seems to be flat, and I don't necessarily like that. Even though I shoot a lot of natural light, I always try to find ways to bring in shadows or whatever. So in this case, we set her on the bench here, and while my wife is fixing her hair and straightening her up and all that stuff, I'm actually setting up a speed light to the left. It's just a Godox speed light to the left of her, like 45-degree angle from our point of view here. And then I had another person hold just a bare bulb speed light. Where's my speed light? Just a bare bulb speed light in the back with the tungsten CTO gel on there, because I want to mimic the warm sunlight that we didn't have. But yet we had nice soft light. So by adding these two lights, I'm creating some shadows and some, I don't know if you can zoom in on her hair, but you can see the warm tungsten light kind of like hitting the back of her hair. So it kind of looks like the sun, although it's not. And
so the light was through here, Aaron. So if we're looking from the back, there was a strobe of that side lighting up that side of the hair.
Yep, someone just holding it. I said, hey, do you mind if you want to help out and hold that? And they just, yeah, sure. So they held it with the orange filter on there to create kind of like a hair light that looks like the sun, even though it wasn't. And I just dialed it. I'm kind of getting into a new style that I might start playing with, more fashion-y, there's flash involved. But most of my work, I try not to let it look like there's flash.
Yeah.
And that's what I kind of did here. Now, one little trick that I do is while my wife is, or your assistant fixing them up, I'm actually exposing what my flashes are off, or the controller on my camera is off. So I'm getting to be able to see the exposure of the surrounding or the background. So as she's fixing her hair up, I'm getting exposure for the background. My lights are set up. I take some test shots while my wife is there. And so at the same time, that's how we work. So when she's done, now I can say, okay, and I start posing her. And my flash, my exposure is all set up, and we start firing. Now, one thing I noticed is you might take a lot of shots, and if you see her feet, I wasn't 100% happy with that, the back foot, I guess. But sometimes you get photos back, and you nailed one, but then you look at the rest of her body, and it's like, everything's perfect except her feet. So I ended up picking this one where it's not quite perfect, but no other shot had 90% of her body perfect, if that makes sense. So that's the only thing I don't like about this particular photo, but everything else looked really good, and that's how I set it up. That's behind the photo.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Of this week.
I see what you mean about the foot. I don't mind that either that much, but it's a fraction turned in. It would
Yeah,
have been a better
but
if it
other
was
shots,
a fraction
yeah.
that way.
When like when you're shooting and you're looking in the back and you nailed that shot, well, I was working on her feet, but at that time she might have moved different, or her chin came down, or she squinted a little too much or something. And so in my mind, like, ooh, look, we got the feet perfect, but the rest, something wasn't off. So something else was off until I got home and said, the feet's perfect on this one, but everything else is perfect on this one. So I just went with it. Most people probably wouldn't notice unless you're picky, and thought I'd throw that in there.
No, it's nice. I mean, there's a few things I love about this. You've allowed the exposure to show with the lights, so your ambient exposure's spot on.
Yeah, the lights came on because it was so dark and stormy,
I also love the way that she's sitting as well. Like that back shoulder is pointed away. This one is pointing towards the camera. The head's tilted beautifully that you can see. What you've got to be careful of too, with particularly with this type of thing, is that you want to try and see a little bit of light on that side of the face, part of the face, because you shouldn't have the nose splitting off to the side. So that's beautiful how you've got that coming through there. The hands are beautifully posed too. They're nice and relaxed. The other thing too is the curves are gorgeous, the way she's got her legs. She's also sitting dead on the side of the seat through here, which is,
remember?
I've mentioned that before.
Yeah,
perfect.
On our last thing. Yeah, it's almost kind of the same pose that you did on your last on the last show.
Yeah, it's a really nice image. Really like it, Aaron. It's great work.
It's interesting you also pointed out the nose, because maybe in another episode we'll talk about posing, because we'll go in. We're doing another little segment after this, and I'll go into that. But keep that in thought about the nose, like he said. So
mine's
mine's
only a quick one, because I just wanted to show this. It doesn't look like much has happened here, but it took an awful lot of technique to grab this one, because
exactly there's a lot going on here.
This was shot. I do a lot of dance work, an awful lot of dance work, and this I had to set up a backdrop here that was around probably 15 meters. In length. I used paper. I bought really the largest paper you could do, and sort of did it as a backdrop and then joined it at the bottom. So Bianna here actually was running. She was running full pelt to do this jump that was there. Now I'll show you, if I click in here, I'll show you the exposure. So it was shot at 1/25th of a second. Now I couldn't shoot much more than this due to the fact that I was using strobes. Now remember, they're usually limited to 1/250th. And I could have changed here and altered the exposure and everything else, like drop the exposure right up and then change things around. But I didn't have time, because I had to do this within a few seconds, because this was a whole day of shooting these dancers. So I couldn't change the exposure between them, say, doing formal shots where they're lying down, just posing, to compare to jumping. So I had to rely here on the power of the flash to actually stop Bianna dead. And I'll show you, it's worked quite well if you look at how sharp
it's really
the image actually is. Now, when you think you couldn't do this without shooting flash, because what would happen is she'd be blurry. So it's not the shutter speed that stopped Bianna here, it's the flash. Now I think it was 8 flashes set up to do this job. All Profoto units, so I had to use every single Profoto light that I've got. Just to explain how it was done, I had 2 big ones to light the background up, which had wide zoom reflectors, which made the white background completely bright. And then I had one flash here, one flash here, one flash here, and one flash here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, I used 6 flashes. So I used 6 flashes to light this whole scene up. Now, the reason why I had to do that was because some of the shots that I did here were shooting with groups of up to 50 to 60 dancers all together. So I had to make sure that the whole scene was lit up. Like I said, it was around about 10 meters, 15 meters in width. And I had to try and make sure that the whole background was lit as well into white. And I'm really happy with how this came out. I shot at f9.
That's amazing.
ISO 160, and it was shot with the Tamron 28 to 75. at 28 mil, and it just shows you the power of using flash, how it can stop something frozen in time and be sharp, even though you're only shooting at 1/25th of a second. And she was running full pelt to do that shot.
I have a question now. How many times did it take her to nail that like perfect like pose there? I mean, it's like,
I'm being completely honest with you here. I could have shot this with, this is where I could have changed it. If I could have altered the exposure, I was using the A7, what was I using? I think it was the A7 III or the A9. I could have probably used the A7 III and shot at 10 frames per second and grabbed it straight away, but I couldn't do that because I couldn't change the lighting due to the fact that this had to be done in a few seconds. I'm very good at this now, Aaron. I'd get that within 2 shots. So I'm very, very quick at it. I know when to shoot the motion, and it's interesting because you have to take the shutter before they reach that spot. So the timing is critical, and it takes a lot of practice to do it. Doing dance stuff is quite hard to do because if you don't get that exact second, they're either before or after. You've got to time the shot perfectly, and I'm getting very good at it now because I do it all the time.
Yeah, that's good. Maybe next week I'll do one of my my behind the photo will be something similar to this with sports, and yeah, I only did it one time, so you have, and it took me a lot of shots to do, and I had to do like 8 different people, so that's why I asked, how'd you get it and so quick, because it took forever to do.
It's harder if you're dealing with flash. If I'm doing still work, I just put the, if I'm not using flash, I just put the, like the A9 into silent shutter, and I can shoot 20 frames per second, and I'll get it straight away. Because this was using flash, you've got a fraction of delay when you press the shutter button for when the flashes go off. This is the thing and that fraction can be the difference of getting her in that perfect moment or being a fraction out of frame or not with legs and arms completely up straight. So like I said, I've got very good at it now. It just takes practice, but yeah, it's just fun. I love doing dance work. I absolutely adore it.
And how, like, where was you on a tripod or handheld?
No, handheld. Yeah, I don't use tripod. Yeah.
And are you just standing straight up, or how close are you to the ground?
I'm standing more or less. I think when I did this out of memory, I would be kneeling sort of down, squatting down and shooting a little bit up. And then obviously she's jumped. Like if you looked at it, the paper is actually quite long. I mean, the paper itself would go right down here somewhere. And it's
so she's above the floor line quite a bit.
Yeah, she's jumped right up.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just can't see that because it's a white seamless background. But, you know, it just gives an idea. And obviously they've purchased this image, so, you know, I was happy about that. Nice. Yeah, so I just wanted to
very good.
show that. Now we're going to go on to the side story, which is your scouting pics, Aaron.
Yeah, scouting. Now, this is something that's very important to my workflow. Anytime I do a video, a short film or a commercial or any video work or even photography, if I can, I will go to the location that we've talked about that we're going to do the photo shoot or the video for, because when it comes to like video, I don't want to go too long, we don't got much time left, but when it comes to video, if you are going to do a short film, let's say, like I did my sci-fi short film Clandestine a couple years ago, I went to this, first I scouted the location on where we're going to go based off of the script I've already written. Once I found a location that I wanted to shoot at, I would go at different times of the day based on my script to see when the lighting is going to be right. Because there's no way I wanted just to get all the actors together and all the grip and all the crew member to show up there. And then you find out that when you storyboarded the actor running over to a certain a certain window, that school lets out at this time.
Do you want me to scroll through these, Aaron, or do you want me to?
Not yet. I'll get to that one in a second. So if you have your actor in your storyboard to run over to a window, let's say, an action film or whatever, or not action film, and then outside you know school's letting out, and you've got a bunch of school kids and all that stuff, it's a disaster. So when I scout out where I want to go, and I go and find out where the sun is and all that stuff so that I can schedule a time that's best for the lighting and all that. And now you can scroll through the images. Now today is why I brought this idea up, is I have a wedding coming up this Saturday, and I wanted to go to where we're going to do the wedding because I wanted to know exactly, the bride told me that we're going to do it between 4 and 5:30. So I went there today at that time to see where the lighting is going to be. Now, don't critique those photos. They're just really quick photos based on
Hang on, Aaron,
where the
I
lighting
just
is.
lost it for a second. Where
That's
are we?
okay. I
Live
can
show.
still talk.
There we go. I'll scroll through now.
And so what I did today for scouting, I went there at the time we're going to do this Saturday so that I know where the lighting is. And they're going to get married in that church that you see right there. So I was saying, uh-oh, phone call.
I should have had that off.
That's a long ring, too. So you can see in the background you got the church there. So I went to all the locations at that time where there's shade, because I'm going to put them in the shade. And if I didn't go there today and just showed up Saturday and hoped for the best, that sun is blasting on that building back there, very bright. And here's a shade shot, and I found a bench here. So in my mind, I'm saying we're going to do a shot here. So I'm thinking of ideas of poses and where the light's going to be. And if I wouldn't have gone and I think I was going to do natural light, this would have been a disaster, because what if I lean him up against this tree right here, and as you can see, the background's blown out. It would be blown out. So I know that I need a flash for these shots. So I thought I'd bring it up today on scouting. If you have the chance, go where you're going to do your photo shoot or your video, find out at what time you're going to do it, and have everybody show up, find out where the lighting is, or maybe there's construction during that hours, and all that stuff. It makes sense. And then I think there's an indoor shot here of the church. Yeah, like this shot here is nothing special, but now I know. I looked at my settings. I said, where's my aperture going to be, my shutter speed? Am I going to need flash in this church? And that's something really cool about scouting, is knowing all that. So now when Saturday comes, I can just go in there and it's not stressful, and I know exactly what I need. So yeah, scouting.
It's actually, I'm just going to go back to the M1, but it's interesting because when you, like I said, if you're looking at these, which was the one that showed it perfectly, like this one here. Yeah, I mean, you can see straight away, that you're going to have issues there with the highlights and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I know I need a flash. I got to bring my flash that whole time, because that building is just blasted by light at from between 4 and 5:30, and I'm going to have to balance out my the bride and groom with flash to make that look nice.
And you can see too, if you look at the next one, how it's been exposed now for the background. So that's what will happen to the background now. So you've got that perfect. You've got this perfect now, but then obviously this is now very, very dark.
Exactly. So scouting is very important for me to make my whole productions, whether it's video or photography, go smooth.
Excellent.
What do you think about scouting?
Well, I have two different thoughts. I can understand why you do it, Aaron. I personally don't do it, apart from I went up to Echuca this weekend, but I was going there to shoot the A6400. I've got a different opinion to you. I like to go and see something fresh on the day.
Yeah, that scares me.
But I did used to be different years ago before I actually started to... I'm just switching over to you and me. I did do it years ago when I first started doing it, but now I like to see things in the moment, and I will find something on the moment. The reason why I do that is because the light may be different on that day when you're there. You might have a sunny day when you go scouting, and then the day you go it might be cloudy or whatever, so it can be different. I tend to my mind never stops, and the second I go somewhere, I'm looking around at everything that's sort of around me, and I'll know immediately where I want to shoot. And I tend to do it on the fly without anything being needed. But like I said, I've done so many weddings now and stuff like that it doesn't faze me. I never really get worried about anything. I know I can almost shoot. I mean, for instance, I did one wedding recently where we were in this amazing location. It was gorgeous. I didn't scout there because it was a fair way away. But then on the day, it absolutely poured down and we had to change tact immediately. And I did the whole lot in just a courtyard. And it was quite funny at the time because people would have thought, how on earth can you do a whole wedding formal shots in just this one small courtyard? But I did. But that's experience, and I knew I could get away with it, and I knew what I could do. And I got their whole wedding album and everything basically just in this one tiny courtyard. But yeah, so it's just different thinking. You have to do with what you're comfortable with. I can certainly understand what you were saying, Aaron, about you like to do that for your own comfort and to be ready for that wedding that you're going to do. It's just, like I said, we just differ in that, and that's going to happen all the time. But
when it comes to video, if you're a videographer, it's very important because there might be something that
Yes.
can ruin your audio in that area. And since I predominantly came from video, I still have that type of idea that I want to know where
Yeah.
the sun's coming in, if there's a school letting out at that time, and noise and all that. So from that video, I bring it right over to photography. Another thing I want to tell you is I always go scouting, because if you go to my aaronjanderson.com and look at any of my photos, you're going to notice that the wardrobe almost always matches with the surrounding, and that only happens because we go and we look at the location, because I'm very that's kind of my style, I guess, is a matching wardrobe with the surroundings, and it only happens if you go and check it out. Or if you can't go there, you can look up the location online. Like we went to Europe, I couldn't go there, so I looked up online and we looked at the colors of the building. So then we got the wardrobe right for my wife to do that. So yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing was too, it was getting, when I first started to do it, it got a little bit out of hand, because I found, because there's so much travel involved with what I do for weddings. Like for instance, this weekend I'm shooting in Echuca, so that's a 2.5 hour drive to actually get there.
Yeah.
I'm then shooting somewhere else over the other side of Melbourne, which is another 1.5 hour drive. Could be 2 hours, 3 hours
So
away.
you can't do it.
It's not possible, because I'd have to spend a whole day going out scouting just this beforehand, and it's not possible when I'm traveling so far and covering such big, kilometers or miles. So it's not really worthwhile for me to do that anymore. I really just did it early on. I can certainly understand what you're saying, though, if it's audio, you're dealing with that. I suppose the thing for me is when I'm dealing with my weddings, I'm only shooting very small parts of it, so I can even get by that if I need to. Certainly if
Right.
you're shooting, like you're shooting, Aaron, with video, just video, you can't get around it. So it's very, very important to check what's going on at that time. It's just not possible for me to actually do it, really.
Now, so you basically, you probably take a lot of gear with you just so you're ready for anything, basically, then.
I always take over the amount that I need. Yeah, way over the amount that I need for that exact case scenario. I take
Yep.
lighting, I take everything in case if I'm going to have issues. Yep.
I'm like scared of timing. I just need to have everything boop, and I already know the poses I'm going to do and all those. So
Yeah.
I'm ready to go already.
Yep. I just laughed because someone said that phone is the same as the angry photographer's ringtone.
No.
I put it on silent, but it still rang. I should have pressed the thing down on the side, though. I hadn't put that on, so that was the issue. I get these stupid telemarketers ringing me all the time. Now, we've got a thing in Australia called the no-call register. I don't know if you have that the same in the US, where you can call up and then they're not meant to ring you. But they still ring me, and it drives me nuts.
I don't know.
I've had this person trying to ring me for the last 3 days, and they call 5 times. I'm just deliberately not answering it because I know it's just telemarketing. All right, so
I don't know
next
if we have something
story.
like that or not.
We've got
Next story.
the main story is this rules of photography. Now, I thought this might be interesting to discuss. Let me just switch back over to here. And I wanted to make this a discussion because I'll put this article down in the comments. Let me just move this over a little bit. Because it's an interesting article. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. The photography actually here is beautiful, but it's talking about 5 rules to follow when compositing an image. And we all know what they are, like your rule of thirds, and you put the eyes in a joining intersection and things like this. But I wanted to talk to you, Aaron, about what you think about the rules. And,
Right.
the interesting thing is that, and I'm going to cut off this for a second because I just want to come back to us, but like I said, I'll put this down below so you can read this. But I particularly like to break the rules all the time. And I think a lot of people probably don't do that. They'll sort of read these 5 rules of, like you've got to put the eyes in the intersection of where the lines meet and all this sort of stuff. And I do follow them. And, like there's certain rules where I try and have the horizon sitting where the lines will be the rule of thirds. Or if you have an ocean, I'll try and put that on there. But I do like to try and break them all the time because otherwise we all look the same. What do you think, Aaron?
I never break them. I stick to them like there's no tomorrow. I mean, you go look at my stuff. It's like exactly like the rules.
So you do?
No, I don't.
Oh.
I don't at all. Let me tell you, rules. Okay, rules for me, they're more like guidelines or suggestions or guidelines, I guess, because when a new photographer is coming into the thing, you got to have some type of like, well, I don't know anything. So there's like these guidelines, like you just mentioned, all. I'm not going to say them all again. So there's like these guidelines, but once you kind of get the idea of the guidelines or what maybe clients might expect and all this type of thing, then just go out and break them all the time. I mean, I just use my eye. I mean, do you think I'm going to take a shot, you know, and I go, now this would be cool. And you see it in sometimes even movies where there'll be a headshot like this and there'll be all that space above, and that's not a good rule to break. Well, they broke it and it looks cool. Or you have like, where's my frame? My frame's here. If I were to take a photo over here, this is supposed to be like not good because the rule should be looking into the frame. But if you're looking that way, it could be cool. It's an artistic type of thing that you can do. So to me, rules are meant to be breaking once you kind of know the rules. There are some rules or guidelines that are bad to break. And since we talk about video in this program too, there's a rule called the 180-degree rule or the invisible line rule, where if I have, let me see if I can see myself. If I have two actors here, my face is the camera, and I want to film that guy, and they're talking to each other, and I got this guy like an over-the-shoulder shot talking to them. Well, you usually set up the lighting and all that and let them say all their lines, and they're saying their lines, and then we switch the whole scene over to this guy, and now we're looking, am I still in? Yeah. We're looking over his shoulder, looking at him. Well, there's a 180-degree line that you don't want to cross. So if I'm filming this guy and I want to stay on this side, if I were to take the camera on that side and then film that guy, what's going to happen is both people are going to be on the same side of the 16:9 screen, and it's going to be like, dude, what just happened? You know, because you're going to see one guy and then another guy just kind of be there. So there are some rules that shouldn't be broken, but it doesn't mean you can't. And I've seen that in movies too, just because they're being artistic and like, hey, I'm going to break the 180-degree rule. And so they can be broken. So, yeah, I think guidelines are good to know when you're learning all this. But once you learn this stuff, just break them and make your own art however you want to make it. So that's my take on that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, actually, it's good that you mentioned that 180-degree rule because, see, particularly I'm still learning a lot in videography, and they're things that I have to constantly think about and stuff like that, you know, like which way should you be facing and to make it look like it's right when you look at it as a viewer. Yeah. So they're really interesting things.
You don't want to confuse people,
No.
You know?
No, you don't. Yeah, and it's important sometimes if you're walking out of the screen that, you know, you then sort of show it coming in the same way, the opposite way and things like that. Yeah, which is really interesting. But with the photography side of things, try and experiment a little bit. And I was just trying to say, think about things like breaking those rules sometimes. Like I'll often put brides direct center of the frame. And you know, you read articles and they're always saying you should be putting them at the intersecting lines on the rule of thirds. And I break that all the time when I'm dealing with a bride, whereas I'll put her dead center in the frame. And I love the look of that. Yeah, and it's interesting. And just make sure, you know, that even with these rule of thirds, that if you do follow the rule of thirds, if you have someone facing, and I'll just switch here so I can just show you, but you'll just have to sort of use this as a guide. I mean, if you had someone on this side that was looking there, don't have the person facing that way. You know, have the first person facing into the line so it looks like they're looking at something. It can look really odd and I see that all the time where people are just following this rule of thirds. They're sticking the person on the intersecting lines, which is like that. But they're not looking the right way. They're looking out of the frame, and it looks odd because you've got all of this blank space sort of sitting through here.
That, yeah,
you know, and you've got to be very, very careful about these sort of things. But I just say, if you can break them, try and make your work look a little bit different. Now, don't break it every single time. There's reasons why those guides are there, but sometimes don't worry about them. Just, and as someone said, Marvin said, rules are made to be broken, and they are. You know, try and think outside the box. Try and think of something that's a little bit different.
Exactly.
Because when someone looks at it, they're going to go, whoa, that looks different. And it might mean that your image gets a lot more views than it would have got otherwise. So, you know, it's just important to think about that.
But it's funny, I'm glad you brought it up, because I do see a lot of articles like the 5 rules or the 10 rules or the number 1 rule, and I'm like, I like I said, though, if you're new, I think it's good to know the rules, so you just have a base of what's going on, and then you can knowingly break those rules and kind of know that you're doing it, and then you can bring it into an artistic way. Like I watched those what's that movie, the Rich Asians? I can't remember
Oh
the
yeah,
title. The new
yeah,
movie.
yeah,
And there were shots like I was just explaining, like just their heads here, and it's all this space above it,
yeah.
but you know it's an artistic move, not that they didn't know what they were doing, and it looked really cool. So,
Was it
yep,
Filthy
rules
Rich
are meant to be
Asians?
broken.
Was it?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, that was really
Yeah,
good. I
that's it.
noticed too, Tony said it's always good to watch movies like you like with the director's commentaries on so that you can get a good sense as to what they chose, why they chose certain compositions
Yeah.
and or lighting techniques.
I learned a lot of videography while actually watching, like you have a DVD or something. I learned all this before, like the internet was like you can find everything. And I would actually get behind the scenes parts of the DVD and listen to the director's commentary. And I learned a lot through that. Like, yeah. So, yep, good.
I noticed
Good
Michael
pointing that
had
out.
said you're going to jail, but he retracted it. He must have felt bad. I thought it was funny.
I did too. I put LOL.
Yeah, I love it. All right, so that's that. So I just wanted to say, guys, think if you can break the rules, don't be so strict with them. The last thing we're going to do is before we go to Q&A is the weekly main story, and I'm just going to, the tutorial of the week.
Tutorial.
I'm going to give you this because what I wanted to show you is that the best thing you can do is to use something like this calibration. I'm going to talk about monitor calibration today. Now, this is the one that I'm using. I'm using the x-rite. Look, there's a million different ones out there, but a really great thing to do is to calibrate your monitor, particularly if you're doing prints and anything where you're color correcting images on screen, because you want to make sure that there's a standard that you're actually following. All I do is I just plug this into the monitor, into the computer. It's USB, and then I actually stick it onto the monitor itself, and then it reads those figures and calibrates the screen. I can then sit it onto my desk and it will balance. It'll change the actual way the image looks depending on my ambient light in the room. So it keeps everything really consistent. Do you use calibration, Aaron?
Yeah, you have to do that, especially if you're going to be a colorist. So some people would hire me, not a lot of people, but I have been hired to color grade a few short films, which isn't super important because they're short films and they didn't actually require the highest. But if you want to do those colors, you have to do it. See, I have two monitors of two different makes and models here. They're both HP, but one's a 2310 and one's a 27. And they're completely different color. So if I want to bounce back and forth from each one, whether you're doing photos or video, it's going to be a nightmare. So you definitely have to color calibrate your monitors if you want to make them look right. If you don't have clients and you're just doing it for fun, I guess it doesn't matter. But if a client has I do some product photography, and if they want a photo to have the colors of their product, they don't want to get it back and it's purple when it was supposed to be blue. So very important.
So what do you use, Aaron?
Same thing.
Oh, same one, yeah.
Yep.
I mean, this has been around for quite a number of years. It's really good, and they're not that expensive.
It's very old.
But the interesting thing is I've got three monitors because I've got a massive TV up the top here, but I've also got the Apple monitor on my other side here. I leave that one uncalibrated because I like to see how things will look if it's not calibrated, and that's a great thing to do. So I have one monitor that's always calibrated, and then I have one monitor that's uncalibrated, so I can do a check and just to see how different it looks without any calibration on it all. So that's a good tip if you've got multiple monitors.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I completely forgot, but I do that all the time when I make a video or a short film or a commercial. I actually put it on iPads and iPhones also because the majority of the people are watching them on iPads and iPhones, and I just want to see how my blacks are. Usually that's kind of the thing I'm going for. And very good tip. Check them out on different monitors, and if you have someone and it's going to be watching on TV, put it on a TV to see how it looks on a TV as well. That way you know if it's like, oh man, people are going to see it on an iPad. The majority of the people, I better change something maybe. So
yeah,
good tip.
The other thing too is it does tell you when you need to update it, so you can set that like update every 2 weeks or update it every month, and it will warn you about that. It lets you know when it's done. So it's just a great thing to have, and I can't recommend it enough, particularly if you're doing prints as well, because you can balance everything like that, and you'll know what you're seeing on the screen is what you're going to get at the print as well. So yeah, it's great.
And real quick, oh, do you have someone saying something?
I'm just laughing at you. Not everyone can pull off pink.
Oh,
They're talking about it when I wear a pink shirt. It's magenta. I've told people that before. They just
oh, but
colorblind.
that's too funny. Well, hey, there was a tip that I had about something you were saying now, and that pink thing got me all screwed up. I don't remember.
I
It was
might
a
come
good
back to
tip.
you. So what I
Yeah.
want to do now is we're going to open it up to questions, just to go through a few questions quickly. So let me bring up a page so that we can see them now. There we go. Let me
Alrighty.
take the questions out of the way. Now I'm just trying to see if there's things that interest people. Are saying drinking
Yeah.
Fanta and vodka.
Someone said here, it says triple, stop right there, David. Triple 070000007 says Aaron looked really excited by that tiny lens he was holding there. Yes, I'm excited about those tiny little lenses. I love small, light, portable stuff. So very exciting.
Let me put
Excited.
that one on actually, so we can see the both of us at the same time.
I think it was. Can you see those? These
Yep.
tiny little things.
Yep.
I mean, that's one reason I went to Micro Four Thirds is because I travel a lot, and I don't like to have a lot of gear. I'm one of those weird people out there. Everybody loves to have like all these lenses and multiple cameras. I don't shoot much. I mean, I went on a whole trip, a European trip, with just the Zeiss 55, which is small, that's why I like it,
Yeah.
and the Samyang 24 millimeter. So yeah, I like the small lenses.
42 Pro says the 85 1.8 is super sharp. That is an amazing lens for its price. It really is
Which
a good
one?
lens. The 85 1.8, that's the Sony lens. That's the
Yeah,
one you had.
I-
Yep.
I'm actually comparing these two side by side. I'm going to make a YouTube channel, and every time I compare two lenses, and this is what makes me also kind of strange, I always get the comments like, "But that's apples and oranges." Well, I want to know if I like apples and oranges better. I mean, is there something wrong with knowing that? So, just a really heads up, these two are almost identical in sharpness, which I was kind of shocked. I guess I didn't know how good this actually was. The 85. They're both really sharp lenses.
The real Kudo says, do you think APS-C won't exist in the future? No, I think it'll still be around. I mean, look, Fuji
Yeah.
aren't going anywhere with their APS-C, you know.
And what about sports and or wildlife? I mean, you can have longer lenses because of the crop factor. So I think they're going to be around for indefinitely. I mean, there's going to be people that want those.
Philip said, got the Samyang dock from England. There you go. So he ordered the
Yeah, I
Samyang
saw
dock
that.
from there. Yeah, and another Gene says also, I think I got the Samyang dock station shipped from the UK.
Yeah, see, the United States here.
Oreo
look
says the Samyang FE lenses are not adapted. They're native FE mount. What else? Let's just scroll down. I'll see if I can find where we're highlighted. Dan said, how's the fallout from the new camera purchase going, mate? Wife must know by now. Yes, she did. She was fine. I bought her some flowers and made her dinner, and she was all right. She just rolled her eyes.
That's all you got. That's good.
Yeah, that's all I've got.
Not bad.
What else have we got? Trevor said the Sigma 18 to 35. That's an amazing lens, that 18 to 35. 51.4
Yeah, I had that
art.
one.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I had it for my Panasonic cameras. I used it with a speed booster, which gave you remarkable results.
So he's saying they're great lenses. What else have we got? Thank you, Long Rider, for the donation. Really appreciate that. I'm just scrolling through these. That was all talking about. Also, 42 Pro says this might be the equivalent of the Samsung NX1 2014 released in terms. I think he was talking about the when I was showing the camera body, the phone body. The
phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Gerald says, hi, Gerald. Back here now from a cruise trip. Gerald's been on a cruise ship.
Oh, Gerald, I didn't know that.
Brandon says,
Having fun,
Light. I think that was the camera manufacturer. Yes, it was. It was Light. Had the 16 cameras on
Light.
it. Yeah.
That was it.
That's
Yep.
the one that Sony,
Thanks.
Aaron, has putting joining up with.
I know. I couldn't think of it when you were talking about it.
Yeah. Gerald said, David and Aaron, did you see Gary Fong using the 135 1.8 with the A9 with firmware 5 and shooting portraits of a moving model at 20 frames per second and nailing every shot? No, I didn't see that.
I commented and said, no, I did not see that.
Gerald said, it would actually be a great sports lens for basketball, etc. That's the 135 he's talking about.
Yeah, see that. Yeah, that's, and I would choose that over a Sigma because of the focusing and all that.
Trevor said, I'm surprised you could freeze her without using something like Broncolor. Well, the Pro Photos are very expensive lights, Trev. So, you know, they're very good, equally as good as Broncolor. So I had no issues with that.